Well, I'm not too proud to where I can't admit it when I'm wrong. And it would appear, at least in part, that I'm going to need to eat some crow when it comes to these two blades right here. The recently released Ranger series from Ontario Knife Company. One being kind of an overbuilt EDC compact version, and the other being a dedicated belt knife, midweight survival knife size range. Now, one of these knives is so good, I wanted to pack it up here into the Wyoming wilderness with my sons on our annual father-son backpacking trip that we're on right now, having a blast. And so we're going to unpack all the ins and outs of these two models, and ultimately hoping to find the answer to the question, is Ontario Knife Company truly back when it comes to high value, high performing, American-made fixed blades? So if you're new to the channel, welcome. This is Gideonstactical. I'm gonna head on over to the campfire and spend some more time with the kiddos, but I'll meet you guys here in just a moment back at the Blade Boot Camp. Now, something I wanna share with you right out of the gate is that White River Knives is the OEM, or the manufacturer, for Ontario Knife Company making these Ranger knives. And you may be thinking to yourself, well, I thought Ontario Knife Company went out of business a few years ago. And they did. But the name got bought up by, I believe, Blue Ridge Knives, which is a distributor, and then they contracted White River to make these models under that branding and under that name. And if you're not familiar with White River Knives, they're some of the best American-made blades around. The same guys making the Ursus Cub are making these Ranger series, and who make the Ursus, they're making the Ranger 4.5. So on the smaller Model 3, we get that good Kydex sheath. It's ambidextrous, belt clip. I'm able to deploy it right away. What are we getting with the smaller model before we jump into the bigger one? Well, we're getting about a 3-inch blade. We're getting about a 3¼ inch handle. You are getting a high saber grind on 1095 steel. And we're gonna talk about HRC and some of my initial worries and how is that held up and things like that. On 0.19 stock thickness. So this is a thick little brute. So it's a little heavy, a little thick, meaning it's a compact tool for light tasks, and it performed how I thought it would with this type of thickness and grind. Okay, it didn't blow me away because of how thick the grind is. Now, they did a decent edge geometry, so it cut better than it could have. I've had other over 3/16 inch thick blades that are just like a butter knife, so it did do okay. But if this had been more around even 5/32 or an 1/8, we would have seen a lot better slicing performance, cutting performance, which is what you're probably doing with this type of tool. And you may be saying, well, Aaron, there's tons of really thin, slicey, compact fixed blades, so it's nice to see something a little bit overbuilt that you can pound on, which you can totally do. I mean, it will handle the abuse because of its thickness and, you know, saber grind design. This is the issue. And it's basically a non-starter for me with this knife, and it has to do with the handle length. Specifically the handle length. So what the tan version has is micarta. My understanding is the black versions that are available are going to be G10. So you can choose between those. That's what I've seen with my data. You get the scallop micarta handle scales. They fill out the hand, but here's the problem. From the blade, because there's no real guard, to the tip, we're looking at 3¼ from where your finger rests here to the bird beak, which is where your finger is. It's 2.75 inches. I wear large size gloves with 3¼ knuckle span. So what do you think is gonna happen? My pinky is basically non-existent. It's resting and having to push up on kind of this overbuilt, beefy, that I have to put a lot of leverage and pressure on blade, and I just don't have the leverage that I am looking for with most tasks. And then add to that I do not have a dedicated guard with the handle scale like I do on an Ursus Cub and similar designs, means that I have the potential to just slide right up and hurt myself. And because the blade is so short, I do not really have the leverage that I'm looking for. If this was like this much further out, I could then grab it, and then at least I would have a resistance point to pierce and stab with. But as it stands right now, I do not feel confident even gripping this, because it's basically a 3-finger knife in any grip. If this had a longer handle and then a more pronounced guard right here, I would feel more confident in piercing and harder leverage, and I could actually put a full grip onto the tool to cut with. So as it stands right now, it's too thick to really do nice, fine finesse cuts, and it's too compact on the handle to really get any confident grip for harder tasks. So I don't really know where I would use it or how it would work. Now, thankfully, the Ranger 4.5 is a completely different animal. And we're gonna get to that in just a second. But before we do, I wanna give a quick shout out to a piece of gear that really helped keep myself, my sons, and my buddy hydrated on trail when we were coming up to this beautiful site for a couple days of camping. And it's today's sponsor, which is Hardside Hydration. Now, these guys are based in Montana, and they've come up with a solution to a problem that I had for years when I was backpacking and hiking, which was I wanted hands-free hydration out of a hose, but I hated the space and the maintenance that goes into a water bladder. And what they've done is giving you the ability to attach that hose to your favorite rigid water bottle, regardless if it's a wide mouth Nalgene, which can also now run an inline nano filter. So can literally now just scoop up the dirty water, screw down the lid, and start drinking from that water source, and I can stay hydrated. And it's like the fastest way to filter water that I have found to date. But if that's not really your thing, you want something lighter, you can screw it on like what my sons were using on a 28 millimeter mouth, like smart bottle, ultralight bottle. And you can do that as well and use it in different formats. You can go with the ultralight for that model or the original swig rig for the wide mouth. And these swig rigs have become an essential piece of kit when I head out on trail and explore. So I encourage you guys, check them out for yourself. I'll have a link popping up. It's in the description box below as well. So you can explore all the different options, the filter, the 2 different sizes, all that. And I have my exclusive 10% off promo code. I'll have that popping up as well, just helping you guys save a little bit of extra cash so that you can stay hydrated when you're going out on all of those adventures. Now, the Ranger 4.5 has a 4.5-inch cutting edge from handle to tip, 5 inches, high saber grind, and is sporting that same 0.19 stock thickness with the same either scallop micarta handles or the black G10 offering. Built out of 1095, and White River states a 58 to 60 HRC. And if you're new to knives, that means how hard that steel is, which usually helps with wear resistance, but potentially adds fragility to any blade. So when I initially saw those numbers, I was a little concerned. Like, are we gonna see failure, possible chipping on these blades? Because I come from the old school, like SE knives with 55 to 57 on 1095, or Tops doing 56 to 58, or K-Bar doing the same 56 to 58 HRC. And here's the first of 2 aspects where I need to eat some crow, is that when I began to test this blade, because I went out and bought both of these immediately as soon as they were available, these things are holding up fantastic. I'm not seeing any chipping, any damage, any brittleness, and what it means is that you're gonna get a slightly better wear resistance than some of those other blades that I just listed, meaning you don't have to sharpen quite as often. I mean, it's still 1095, you're gonna be sharpening this pretty frequently. Thankfully, you can bust out something like a Work Sharp pocket sharpener that I had on that trip. Just has some ceramic and a diamond stone, bam, get that hair popping sharp right away, so it's not gonna take a lot of effort. You'll be doing it more often than, say, your MagnaCut or your 3V, but it's still going to be able to handle the abuse and everything that I would put through a knife of this size, but also be able to give you some better wear resistance. And when it comes to performance itself, I still feel that this could have easily been a 5/32, like the same thickness as the original Ursus, and especially with the saber grind over a full flat like you get on SEs and things like that, I think the durability would have been absolutely fine, giving it a little bit better slicing geometry, but I was really pleased that I could get a feather stick going without much difficulty. A lot of the old Rangers, Ontario SP line, they had the thickest edges imaginable, and they were just a nightmare. You had to completely reprofile them out of the box to really get any sort of woodworking done. This does have a good edge. It does do the type of work that this style, which is like a field knife, combat knife, survival knife, that you can use camping and backpacking and stuff as well, should be able to go through and be able to perform. It's going to be able to do well and just be an all-around, all-purpose tool. Now, it's not all rainbows and lollipops. There's one aspect that's more of a personal preference that I don't really prefer with this model. But before we get to that, let's talk about this sheath, which is a massive bonus with this model. The old Ontarios, the Rat, the Rangers, they were usually nylon sheaths that were just basically barely getting the job done. This is the same type of Kydex you're going to be getting on an Ursus 45. Excellent pancake, tons of lashing options for you to choose from, and the tension, excellent. I mean, it's not going anywhere, and it's going to come with an ambidextrous dangler, and this is a rubberized button snap dangler, so easy to put on and off your belt. I've been walking around camp with it. We trekked all the way around the lake with it, and it is very carryable in that configuration for right or left carry. One little data point, I've had about a half a dozen White River knives now. The smaller Ranger has the tension bolt. This one does not. It was something that I highlighted early on when we first started reviewing some White Rivers that I would like to see that. They started adding them, so I don't know if it's like they're picking and choosing models, or if just out of the last about half dozen, 2 of them have not come with a retention bolt. So I don't know if that's getting missed in manufacturing and putting together an assembly, or if it's like a pick and choose thing. So I hope if it's a just, whoops, forgot to put that on there, they do better with that, because now I've had that a couple times on different models. But aside from that, guys, awesome sheath. And if you think about it, if you were to get this style of Kydex sheath for one of those old Ranger Ontarios, you'd be paying $80 to $100. Now, the little hiccup that I have has to do with the handle. Now, thankfully, the micarta, or G10, again, if you go black, scales are ergonomic. If you remember the old Rat series, the old Ranger series, I mean, those were literally bricks, you know, and they were not ergonomic. This definitely has good scalloping. The hills and valleys give you a lot of texture to grab onto. Being a more aggressive tool, fills out my large size hands with a little bit to spare. The aspect is just the choil. Now, with a 4.5-inch cutting edge, I don't think it's necessary to have a choil. It's not my preference. We're looking at an identical, almost cutting edge to a Ursus 45. And this doesn't have a choil. This is my preferred design. This forces me to really, if I want to do fine stuff, get up on the choil, which is beneficial in my mind for over 6-inch blades. Knives that have like over 5 inches of cutting edge, I kind of like choils, especially if they're really big, like 7 inches, then that gives you some balance point. But on a knife of this size, like the SE4 and things like that, I'm like, why are we doing this? It's just wasting space. We could have easily moved this guard forward, given us a little more handle, brought the edge back a little bit, and it just would have been a more streamlined design, I feel like. That's my personal opinion. As it stands, they've scalloped around the choil really nicely, and if you like choils on your smaller knives, totally cool. You're definitely going to get up, choke on it. It totally does what it's supposed to do. I just think it's kind of a waste of space when we're looking at knives like an Ursus Cub, or excuse me, an Ursus 45, that don't require that when we're working with the same blade length. So not a deal breaker, but it is a preference point that I lean more towards non-choiled knives in this size range. But leave a comment and let me know what you think. Now, here's the second point that I was really dogging on these knives when I initially saw that they were released before I bought them, was that they were showing a price point, an MSRP of like $250, $260. And I was like, bro, I don't care what you're doing. I mean, that's the same cost as a Magna Cut Ursus 45. I don't want to be paying over $200 for 1095, especially if I can help it. And it's going to be very hard to compete with SEs and, you know, Tops knives and K-bars, you know, things like that. I bought these off of Chicago Knife Works. I paid $108, I believe, for the small one, and $118 for this model. They are currently in stock. I have no affiliation with Chicago Knife Works. Do know if you do order through them, it can take like a couple weeks. I think it took almost 2 weeks for me to get these knives once I order them, so they're not the fastest in my experience from shipping. The other distributors like Knife Country have the full size for like $160 ballpark. So I mean, I think that's going to be more like as they get probably into more distributors. That's probably what you're going to be looking at, like $150 for the smaller model. Even at those prices, that is, if you can score it for like $120, I mean, that is nuts. That is mind-bogglingly good and one of the best American-made value knives you can find for that price. And even at $160, it's extremely competitive with like the Tops Baja 4.5, and especially with the larger model. If you look at it compared to say a Becker tweener series, and then you get my Micarta handle scales on those, you're at least at $160, if not more. So in conclusion, currently the 3, it's just a non-starter for me. On the 4.5, dude, definitely a great contender now for a bug out bag knife, get home bag knife. If you just like more aggressive blades for your camping knives, Ontario's back. Ontario is absolutely back, and I am stoked to see what else comes out. I'd love to see like a 7-inch version of this exact same profile. Then the choil would make sense to me, and a lot of stuff. That is me and my mileage. I want to know from you guys, what do you think about these models, especially if you own one? Leave comments, your thoughts. Really appreciate your time today. I hope it's been fun, entertaining. Remember to check out the other videos, putting up content every single week, and always remember to stay equipped, stay prepared, and I'll see you out there.